I started going and meeting the people that I'm making videos about. I thought I'm just going to contact the Bundys and see if they'd meet with me. They tried to round up the cattle in 2014, and it got to a point where the Bundys and their supporters outnumbered the federal government 4-1.
Now that it's been, 7 years, right? Is there any retrospective on it where people are looking back and saying, this just should not be the way we do any of these things?
It did take a while for me to totally get it. It makes perfect sense to me now that what's at stake for them is their identity and heritage. They're going to continue to use their rights until the federal government comes back and tries to stop them again.
It's a giant moral/political game of chicken. Mm-hmm. The only way it stops is if somebody quits.
Hey, welcome to the Create Unknown, the home of Make Something Mean Something. It is TCU's Day. We are here live on Discord every Tuesday, 6 p.m. Eastern. I am Kevin Lieber. With me, as always, is Matthew Tabor.
Yeah, it's been a tumultuous week for the alumni of the Create Unknown. iDubbbz has become the most hated man on Twitter. And this is, I say week, but it's really like 72 hours. So iDubbbz has had creator clash problems. Chris Raygun has no one to fight in creator clash. Nathan Barnett has deleted every one of his tweets. And Sana Chu is out of jail, bonded out of jail. That just happened yesterday. So I just look forward to seeing how this week's return guest will completely and totally disgrace himself.
Yes. Well, we have an absolutely wonderful return guest, hot off of the heels of a really, really exciting trip. You know, when we talk about make something mean something on this podcast, I think perhaps no one is doing it better than Oki's Weird Stories. So we need to find out what's going on out in the Wild West with the Bundys and the bullet holes and road signs. I don't know. I've been following your tweets voraciously and really enjoying all of your updates. But first of all, welcome home.
Thank you, and I really appreciate you saying that. Very glad to be back.
So first of all, when you and I recently connected about coming back onto the podcast, you had mentioned that, well, I might be making this trip. I don't really know. We'll see what happens. So I'd love if you started there. Like, how did this trip? So actually, we should probably start at what was the trip, and then how did it get, put together initially?
Okay. So the trip. So basically, for like since my last 3 videos, basically, I started going and meeting the people that I'm making videos about, right? So it kind of started way back when, where I was like, I remember the first time I interviewed someone, it was John McAfee, and I was like, holy shit, I just can reach out to someone like that and they'll talk to me. And then I kind of continued doing that with everything, but it was always remote interviews. And then more recently, like my past 3 videos, I actually go and I meet the people. So this is just a continuation of that. And I'm also just trying to do that with every video that I make now. And basically the Bundy thing, it was recommended to me, the topic. Like a lot of my topics are actually, I have a big list, but every once in a while someone mentioned something to me like this, which I never heard about, the Bundy Standoff, and their subsequent takeover of the wildlife refuge. So there's like a lot to this story, and basically, if I want to encapsulate it, it's like the only family really in the United States who fought with the federal government and won more than once. So that kind of encapsulates the whole vibe of it. Like, so I started researching it, the topic, and it was about a month into reading about it. I thought, fuck it, I'm just gonna contact the Bundys and see if they'd meet with me. Like, I thought it wasn't going to happen because the FBI did a fake documentary sting on them. Yeah, in 2015. So they made a fake documentary crew, and they just tried to get the Bundys and their supporters to incriminate themselves on camera. Actually, one guy that they gave alcohol to, and then they asked, like, were you expecting a gun battle at the standoff? And he was like, hell yeah, I was, and I wanted to kill someone. So now he's in prison for like 60 years. So
how did you convince them to talk to you after they've gotten burned that badly?
I don't know. They were just open to it, I guess. Still, I was expecting them not to be, but I called them, and then I first called Ryan Bundy. If you see my on my Twitter, he's the guy that with the cowboy hat that was. There's a few pictures of me and him on my Twitter right now.
Does the guy with the cowboy hat, does that narrow it down with the Bundys?
Not really. No, definitely not.
It's like, yeah, I love that character on Yellowstone with the cowboy hat.
Yeah. By the way, Yellowstone, that's 100% influenced by the Bundy story. It even starts in the same way, where like the government's trying to round up their cattle, I think, and then there's like a shoot off, which didn't actually happen in the Bundy situation. There's no one shot any weapons. But yeah, no.
But they start that entire issue of property rights with the free grazing going back into the 1800s. I mean, it's such an issue with deep multi-generational lore.
Yeah.
When all of that stuff exploded with their standoff, a lot of people were like, wow, this is crazy. And it seems like, something we've just heard of, like, the Waco thing just popped out of nowhere. No, it's not like that at all. No, this is like 150 years of a very, very complex intersection of farming policy and people's lives.
Yeah, so it goes way back. So basically, they're ranching on public lands, and I don't know if you're familiar with the idea of the tragedy of the commons. So you have a big open range, and there's a bunch of ranchers who use that big open range. They all share it, but then what happens is they don't really take care of the range that they're using because it doesn't really belong to them. And then, this is somewhat connected to it, but, there was other issues where like cattle barons ended up just taking over that open range and creating barbed wire and keeping everybody else out. So then they had to introduce legislation because there was range wars. People were killing each other over this. Then they have the Taylor Grazing Act in 1936. That's like the federal government will manage this land. And then from that point, these cattle ranchers agreed with the federal government that, okay, we're going to be leasees on this land, and we're going to pay a grazing permit. So that continued, and then for a long time, like the government officials that were managing that land were ranchers as well, or industry people. So it was like it benefited the ranchers, right? And actually, the ranchers wanted the government intervention at first, but then later on, 30, 40 years from then you get environmental revolution. Basically, you get Endangered Species Act and FLIPMA and a whole bunch of other legislation that severely regulates the ranchers' ability to graze their livestock on public lands. And then in the 70s, you get the Sagebrush Rebellion. So that's kind of the start of this movement, where it's a bunch of industry people basically being like, well, we want the federal government to cede this land to the states, so the states take care of it. We don't want the federal government all the way in Washington, D.C., 3,000 miles away from our ranch, telling us what to do. We want the state to control it. And, Ronald Reagan supported them. He even said, like, count me in as a rebel. So then it kind of fizzled out. And then in the 90s, you get the wise use movement. And, like, that's when things start to get kind of hairy, where, like, environmental offices are bombed and people are being killed and a whole bunch of wild shit. And it's all about, like, industry's use of public lands. And then now the Bundys are, like, the third generation, basically, in this movement, where it's the Bundy movement now.
Wait, so
there's so many sub battles. I just want to point out, like, you did an outstanding job of summarizing that in a few minutes, because it is so ridiculously complex that like an example I wanted to pop out about how they're just crazy levels to every individual piece of it is when you talk about the grazing on government land. It matters what's grazing too, where cows eat differently than sheep do. Sheep eat right down to the roots when they graze. And so, back in the day, you had conflict between the sheep farmers and the cattle farmers because the sheep would ruin land for cattle. There's nothing for the cattle to eat at all, whereas cows don't eat right down into the dirt like that. And so it's not just, farmers versus policy and lobbies. You've got like the sheep lobby versus the cow lobby. And like it gets insane quickly, especially when there's this strange mix of responsibility between the feds, the state governments, and then individual landowners. Like I can't think of anything that is messier than this subject, because like you said, it brings in eventually over time the environmental people, the biologists. I mean, everybody has their hands in this pot of slop, and it's very hard to make sense of.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and actually that piece of it, the what's it called, the beef is beef is a funny word to say, but the beef between the cattle grazers and the sheep and the sheep livestock guys, like I didn't know about that either. See, like there's just constantly new things that I'm learning about it, and it is like very complex and yeah, I think that's one of the things that really attracted me to this story, because there's just so much to chew on. And yeah, you could. I mean, I've spent like a month and a half or so researching it so far. I don't feel like I'm, ready to, actually start writing the script even yet. So there's a lot to this for sure.
I wanted to go back because we actually didn't get you to answer the question that you started, which was, so how did you eventually hook up with them? You said you had reached out to someone named Ryan, right? And then where did it progress from there?
So I called Ryan Bundy, who is Cliven Bundy's eldest son. Cliven Bundy is like he's the patriarch. It all starts with him. But yeah, I called Ryan and I asked him, "Hey, can I come and interview you?" And he's like, "Okay, sure." And that was that. That was it. It was as easy as that. And so I went and I interviewed Ryan, and he was very accommodating. And I have no complaints about the Bundys really, because they were very polite, nice people, at least to me. And I mean, that's what a lot of people in the area that we talked to also said pretty much the same thing, that, they're clearly very well liked in the area. Even the people that disagree with their actions, only have like good things to say about them. Like there was one lady who's like, "Oh, Cliven's a sweetheart, but he left school when he was in the 3rd grade." So that was her way of being like, "Yeah, I like him, but I don't really agree with what he's doing." So we spent 3 days with Ryan, and then we spent around 30 minutes with Cliven, which was interesting because it was like, I don't know if you ever talk to people who have like a script ready always, So for him, he had he wasn't really looking to engage in like a dialogue or anything. He just gave a speech. So it was like 30 minutes. We recorded him. It was great. He pretty much gave us everything we need though. So it was like, whatever. And then after that, we talked to an environmentalist. We had an environmentalist ready to go before we went to, before we started the trip. And I'm not going to say his name, but he basically is like, "Okay, yeah, sure, come down as long as people are going to actually see this thing." Because I do a lot of documentaries and they never see the light of day. And he's like, "Okay, just give me a sec, I'll review it, but I'm likely going to do it." So I get there and I call him like, "Hey, I'm in Vegas right now, just seeing if we can meet up." He's like, "No, I don't do YouTube. I don't do YouTube documentaries." I'm like,
"Okay,
yeah."
All right.
So then
there's a little bit of a conflict between, I do documentaries, but I'm upset that no one ever sees them, and I won't do a documentary that guaranteed everyone in the world can essentially access for free with an internet connection. Kind of a stupid conflict there.
Yeah, I know.
With a portfolio showing it's hundreds of thousands on everything.
It's insane, actually. It was funny because also this guy was like younger, so I thought, oh, okay, he probably gets it, because I've had this problem with older people who don't know anything about YouTube, but he clearly knows something about YouTube, and he probably should know how to navigate the site and see that my channel has a lot of views and stuff, and if that's what he was concerned about, he would have seen that. But anyway, luckily we found another environmentalist. We just called around and we found this desert tortoise expert, where which is the species this whole thing kind of starts with. So we talked to her, and I told her about that guy, and she's like, wait, really? Because all of the documentaries that are done about desert tortoises and stuff, we only see that in like our industry, and only like 500 people see it, any of these things, if at all. And like most of them are all on YouTube. He is like vocal. He's really vocally against, like, he's open and vocal against the Bundys. So I thought he's going to do it for sure, because there's so much, like, so many articles about him talking about it. And he even said when I called him, he's like, oh yeah, I'm not going to pass up any opportunity to talk about the Bundys. So
I don't know what you've been sipping, but you've got it all wrong. It's time to commit to the leaf. We've embraced the smoothness and surprising pick-me-up that tea provides. I literally drink it all day long, nearly a gallon a day, and it powers me through research, script writing, and forums on websites that I refuse to name here. But we don't drink normie NPC tea. We drink cultured and refined anime tea from the Dragon's Treasure. Kevin still likes the gunpowder green called Space Cowboy, and I've sampled nearly 40 Dragon's Treasure teas at this point. Lately, I've been slamming black teas like Kentucky Bourbon and liquefied Berserk Despair. Scottish Breakfast is deep and peaty, and I smooth it over with Sebastian's Morning Earl Grey, which has the best vanilla cream taste I think I've ever had in a cup. Give me a pot of that with a hot meatball sub from Sal's Pizza and Brooks Barbecue Chicken to wash down my last meal on death row. I highly recommend the sampler packs. You'll want to try everything just like I did. I literally have not had one tea that I wouldn't be happy to reorder. The Dragon's Wings membership fuels new tea experimentation, and the Tea of the Month Club provides a regularly scheduled surprise. And when you order from the Dragon's Treasure using code CREATE, you'll get 10% off your order. That's 10% off using the code CREATE at thedragonstreasure.com. The link's in the description. Can you go into detail about what happened when it really blew up there? This is the 2014 standoff where everybody, at least in the U.S., it dominated the news cycle, where really the Bundy name became relevant, because it was really the first thing like it that had happened in that same way, probably since Waco. And most people now were not old enough, like the YouTube generation was not old enough to watch that unfold in the early 90s. Kevin and I were kind of prime age to be glued to the TV with few alternatives. So that was pretty good. But when it hit, it was like something that people were not used to at all. So what happened in 2014 that turned this into a big story?
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, so should I start from 2014 or go back to like the beginning of how it like all? I guess it's better if I just kind of give the lead up, right? So
sure.
In 1989, the desert tortoise was put onto the endangered species list as a threatened species, and basically, because of development in Las Vegas, they had to relocate, desert tortoise habitat elsewhere and to protect their habitat. So they decided, well, we're not going to halt development in Vegas, but we can move it to this open range where there's only 53 cattle ranching families operating. And this is like really, it's tough terrain. It's arid. It's not really great for livestock grazing, but people have made it work for couple generations. But yeah, so the cattle ranchers and livestock people, they kind of got the short end of the stick, right? Not important as development. So what we're going to do is we're moving this critical desert tortoise habitat to this range, and we're going to try and get all of these cattle ranchers out of here. So the way that they did that is by regulating the hell out of it, basically saying like, okay, well, if there's not enough rain in this region by spring, then you're not allowed to graze your cattle at all for a year, right? Which is deadly to their business. So
Sure.
most cattle ranching families, 52 of them, let the government buy out their stuff and they moved elsewhere. And the thing is, like, most of these people aren't like rich, right? A lot of them were just doing it because it's traditional. It's like they're part of their heritage and tradition, and they can make a bit of extra money, but it's not like, something that makes someone wealthy doing this, especially on public lands. So Cliven Bundy, and he's the only cattle rancher left in Clark County in that area, because he said no. He didn't want to, let the government buy out his ranch or anything like that. And what he decided to do is stop paying his grazing fees. So basically, because it's public land.
Was that paid to the state or the Bureau of Land Management?
Yeah.
Was that federal or state?
Federal. So he tried to pay to the state because he believes in state supremacy over the federal government. So he tried to pay his grazing fees to the state, and they're just like, well, we can't do anything with this, right? The Bureau of Land Management is the one who manages this land. You pay it to them. So they sent his money back, but he was like, oh, well, I'm not paying any money to the federal government. This should be under the state. So basically it continued, and he kept collecting grazing fees. And then in 1998, a federal judge pretty much said, stop, you can't do it. They ordered him to stop. And they even gave the go-ahead to the BLM to round up his cattle. Now, the reason it didn't happen right then and there is because of Waco and because of Ruby Ridge. So they're like, we don't want something like this to happen, so we have to be very careful with how we approach this. So what their decision is that they ended up just kind of not really doing anything about it until 2014, which is when there was a new BLM director in the area, and she looks at this Bundy situation. She's like, why isn't anybody doing anything about this? So then they do like a year-long investigation. It was like started in like 2013 or 2012. It was around that. But that ended up leading to a federal judge saying, again, go ahead and round up the cattle. And then they tried to round up the cattle in 2014. But what happened is that after videos of the Bundys being tased and pushed around by the federal government started to spread online, the militia came, like the 3%ers, Oath Keepers, and Operation Mutual Aid. A bunch of other cattle ranching families came to help them, and pretty much anybody, who supports them, was supporting them, came. It was a big rallying point, and it got to a point where the Bundys and their supporters outnumbered the federal government 4-1, and it kind of like the big climax of the whole roundup was at a bridge where on one side behind a gate was the federal government with like snipers and a whole bunch of guns, but then on the other side the Bundys and their supporters with guns as well. So the way that it's described is that if a car backfired, there would have been a massacre, and luckily that didn't happen because the federal government, they were like, this is going to get way too hairy, and they decided, okay, we're going to retreat and we're going to return all the cows. So that is one aspect. That is 2014. But then there's a lot more that happens after that. I guess we can...
To give you a chance to take a quick breath, I wanted to point out that when we talk about BLM, it used to mean something universally understood as something quite different than now. That's the Bureau of Land Management in the U.S., which is the federal body that handles this sort of thing. So a lot of people don't realize that was just an acronym that everybody used, and now it's a little more confusing.
Yeah. No, it's we did get some good sound bites of people being like, Bureau of Land Management, not not Black Lives Matter. So at least we can use that.
Right.
Yeah.
I hope they have a sign that says like BLM and then in parentheses, no, not that one.
Well, have you seen that show, White Lotus? There's Stifler's mom, what's her name? Jennifer Coolidge.
Oh,
Coolidge. Yeah.
Yeah. So she plays she plays the Jennifer Coolidge character. So she's kind of always drunk and out of it. But she meets this guy while she's on vacation, and he's this older white guy, and he says that he's part of the BLM, and she thinks that he's talking about Black Lives Matter the whole time. It's a pretty funny gag.
Nothing will be funnier than the recent Linus Tech Tips gag that was like a scene out of The Office, which I will not recreate on this podcast. Anybody is willing to look it up, like go ahead, just look up Linus Tech Tips. I don't know what to say about. Maybe just look up hard R Linus Tech Tips.
Oh,
Really?
Oh, I haven't seen this.
Oh,
Ooh.
you missed it?
No, I didn't know
Yeah, I haven't
anything
seen
about
it.
this.
Oh, okay. Please watch
Whoops.
it after we're done recording because it is a scene out of The Office. Like all you have to do is imagine Linus as Michael Scott.
Oh man.
Oh.
And I'm sorry, I don't know his co-host name, but you know he would be Jim. So just imagine Michael Scott and Jim instead of Linus and his co-host, and it's like a scene out of The Office. It's unreal, but it's real. It's very funny.
I saw like a thumbnail I think on YouTube, and it was like Linus Tech Tips banned, and I didn't click it. I was just like, no, he wasn't banned. What are you talking about? That's like John Green being banned. That doesn't happen.
Oh, yeah, okay. The episode chat is saying the video is called Linus Almost Destroys the Company. So yeah, just look that up. And like I said, just imagine it as a scene from The Office.
Well, let's talk about something less controversial. So what happened with the standoff?
Yeah, what happened with the government and the guns?
Oh, yeah. So when they came in, the BLM, after they got the okay, there was this big militaristic operation run by this guy named Dan Love, who already had a really controversial past. Like there were some like Native American artifacts that like people were buying and selling illegally, and he did this big bust, and it ended up with a doctor killing himself. So this guy Dan Love is this like really militaristic gung-ho guy, and he comes in like to the Bundy roundup, you know, and he's like playing like what's it called, like Flight of the Valkyries, and he's just like, we're gonna get them, we're gonna, you know. So they come in with like black helicopters to round up the cows. They have sniper rifles. They have guys with, you know, big guns and like, you know, big uniforms like Kevlar and stuff. And they're pushing people, and they make the thing that I think really pissed people off, even more so than seeing women being tased and pushed, is that they made First Amendment areas, which I'm pretty sure is illegal. They tried to corral people in these First Amendment zones. So they got some construction mesh and cordoned off like a square, like 7 miles away from the roundup for people to protest. Yeah. Oh, you can only protest in these First Amendment areas, which is like, okay.
They did everything so badly. Like everything you're describing is exactly what the people on the other side say is the worst case scenario. Like they warn everybody that like, this is what's going to happen. They're going to come in with black helicopters. They're going to be, and then they actually did all of these things. It's like they were following the villain script that the Bundys wrote.
Well, that's pretty much kind of what it was like. They came in like the jackboots that militia people are like deathly afraid of. And I forget if this was, cause there was an assessment written, and I forget if it was about the roundup or the wildlife refuge thing, but it had to do with the Bundys. And basically it was a guy who was part of the BLM being like, we messed this up terribly. It was like an open letter, an assessment about what happened. But yeah, they screwed up royally, and they just continue to screw up. Every single interaction that the federal government had with the Bundys, they just kept screwing it up. So the Bundys end up coming out looking pretty good in a lot of ways.
They engendered a lot of sympathy at the time, and as these things were developing, because their plight was real. I mean, you can say that they should have complied, you know, and it's a non-issue. But after that point, you know, the stuff that BLM and associated parties did was oddly heavy-handed, and kind of bungled. Like it's like every single fork in the road that they had, they chose the worst possible option. It was like a choose your own adventure book where you're trying to die.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So the thing is, like with the Bundys, people they had way more sympathy and support with the roundup, but then what they did in 2016, that lost them a lot of sympathy. And the Bundys are like hardcore Mormons. And even the Mormon church, the LDS church, came out and against them because in 2016, they took over a wildlife refuge. Actually, I'm wearing the hat of the wildlife refuge right now. So Malheur Wildlife Refuge. They went in there with guns and they took it over and they occupied it for like 60 days. And the purpose of that was that they were defending these two cattle ranchers, the Hammonds, who got into the federal government in a very similar way to them and were about to go to jail. But then they also wanted to occupy the building for as long as it takes until the federal government ceded land to states, like public lands to states. So they wanted the whole country to change, basically, and that's what they were protesting. But a lot of people came out against them for their actions, especially with the occupation.
We want to help you make something and mean something. And we say that phrase all the time because when you're making something and you know it means something, even if it's just to you, that's when you feel pretty good about what you're creating. The support for the Create Unknown in recent weeks has been incredible. Animators, artists, musicians, YouTubers, aspiring filmmakers, comedians, it is crazy how talented everybody in this community is. Consider joining the Create Unknown Patreon. Every dollar that comes through goes straight into the podcast and its community. That means more highlights videos. It means a big Minecraft project that's on the way. And eventually we'd like to manufacture custom piss bottles so you never have to leave your battle station. And being a patron unlocks participation in all of our live recordings. You've seen the roster of guests we've had. Having access to their minds is a unique opportunity. You can go to patreon.com/thecreateunknown or click the link that's in the description. Every little bit helps and your support means absolutely everything to us. Patreon.com/thecreateunknown, links in the description. We appreciate you, Space Cowboys.
That was the scenario that I remember the most, was that like long standoff. And then for whatever reason, I don't remember whatever happened with that. So how did that end?
Oh, the standoff ended with the BLM basically, the BLM were outnumbered 4-1 and they were at this place called Topak Wash. So there's a bridge and then the BLM is down here and there's a gate and they're behind the gate. And then all the Bundy supporters, like a bunch of them are on a bridge. They have high ground and they have sniper rifles pointed at the feds. And then they have a bunch of people down in the wash walking towards the gate. And the federal government's like, okay, this is going to get really hairy. We don't want another Waco Reapry Ridge. So we're going to retreat. And the Bundys weren't okay with just that. They wanted the government to also return their cows. So that's kind of why they ended up like, that clash happened, that standoff. It was Bundy and their supporters being like, return the livestock now. So government's like, oh, we're going to retreat. And then the standoff happens because the Bundys and their supporters also wanted them to return the livestock, which they did. They eventually did.
And how does the incident with Lavoy play into this?
Lavoy, that was the first time he met the Bundys. He went to the roundup to see what was going on because he was also a public lands cattle rancher and he had no problem paying his paying his grazing fees and stuff. And he had no problem with the BLM. But then he went and he met the Bundys and he talked to them and he felt like he learned something life-changing. And he basically within a month, he stopped paying his grazing fees and then he started making YouTube videos talking about what he was up to. And then that led to like a year of the FBI harassing him, basically flying drones over his house. They bugged his house. Like the bunch of militia people came in. 2 of them were moles, FBI moles, and they bugged him and his wife's house. We talked to his widow. We visited her. Wow. And yeah, she was just talking about like, she just couldn't trust anybody at that time, basically. But then Lavoy in 2016, he ended up being kind of one of the major players in the Bundy movement, where he was present at the meeting in Oregon when they decided that they're going to take over the wildlife refuge, which is in 2016. So he was one of the leaders that ended up taking over that place. and he ended up becoming like the spokesman on MSNBC and stuff, and on the internet. Like leftist liberal circles started calling him Tarp Man because he kept showing up on MSNBC, and he's wearing a tarp over him, while he's talking to reporters and stuff. But yeah, he ended up being kind of like the spokesman, and basically I forget if it was the 50th or 60th day of the occupation, but basically he and the Bundys and all the main players went in 2 cars to go visit a constitutional sheriff who was sympathetic to their cause. So and because the feds had so many moles in with them in the occupation, they knew that this was going to happen. So then they set up what's it called? I guess a roadblock, but basically they got the jump on them. And
like an ambush almost.
Yeah.
Right.
And then Lavoy got out of the car and he was saying, "Go ahead, shoot me, but I'm going to go talk to the sheriff. Shoot me. And it's not completely clear, but it seems like he might be reaching into his pocket. His wife said that wasn't true, and she said that the gun was planted later on. But basically, he was shot. And the other guy who we also interviewed, Ryan Bundy, I was telling you about earlier, he also was shot. He got shot in the shoulder, but Lavoy Finicum died, and he was the only person who died throughout the whole Bundy thing. And
there was drone video of that, right? Mm-hmm. Something overhead that kind of showed what happened, but not really.
Yeah. It's interesting.
What was your take on that?
I'm not sure yet. I'm not sure. I know that when we talked to his widow, she was adamant that the video was much more clear when they showed it in court. I've seen different versions of it because there's cell phone footage. I'm not sure if it's a drone or a helicopter, but there's, a bird's eye view. And then there's other footage, I forget. But there's one video online that shows 3 different angles that you can look at. But I'm not sure myself yet. Like I said, there's so much research for this topic left for me to do before I'm even comfortable writing the script. So I'm just going to say, I don't know. I don't know yet.
It really is a crazy scenario because, like you described, they did all of these things like planting the moles and putting bugs in the house and kind of making it as bad as possible. Like if you wanted to put somebody as far on edge as possible, this is what you do. And then that obviously is going to come to a head one way or another. Mm-hmm. And it's now that it's been 7 years, right? Mm-hmm. Is there any retrospective on it? Like any feelings where people are looking back and saying, this just should not be the way we do any of these things? Or they say, no, the responsibility is ultimately on these people to comply.
I'm not sure I understand the question. So who
do they regret the way they handled it? I guess that's
the feds or the Bundys?
The simplest. Both, actually.
I don't think the Bundys regret it. I've talked to people who have expressed some discontentment with the way that the Bundys have handled it. Actually, quite a few people, but I think that the Bundys are when you speak to them. When I spoke to them, you get the sense that they are incredibly logically consistent with their views and beliefs, and they're hardcore constitutionalists, they're Mormon, and most of their values come from those two things, right? Right. They believe that, for example, Ryan Bundy told us that about the white horse prophecy, for example, that Joseph Smith said one day that the Constitution will, only be left on a string, and it would be up to the priesthood members of the LDS Church to, save it from inevitable, or not inevitable, but basically like its demise. And I asked him, "Are you priested?" And he says, "Yes." So this is it's not only political values, but it's also religious. So they are fighting a holy war in a way. And I don't think that, they also don't believe that the country has ever functioned properly. So I don't think that they're ever going to, change their mind on this. They're pretty steadfast. I think that from the federal government's side, there has been people within the federal government who've later, said that, well, this was handled terribly. I was telling you about that assessment earlier where they were basically saying that. So yeah, I mean, also the Bundys, they did win in court, like a jury, what's it called, in one of their cases sided with them, and in their other case, a federal judge dismissed the whole case because the what's it called, the FBI was withholding evidence. So it was dismissed with prejudice, meaning that they can't be tried for those same things again. So the way it stands right now with the Bundys, if you visit that area, it's the Virgin Valley area, you'll see that their cows are everywhere. Like even if you go into the mountains, you'll see their cows, you'll see dead cows, you'll see literally everywhere. It's supposed to be illegal, but there has to be signs warning people that this is open range and that cows might come onto the road. So even though it's illegal, the government still has to put up signs. So they are very much. I think that they know that eventually the government might try something again, but they've always had the mentality of if that happens, they'll do whatever it takes to defend their rights, right? So
yeah, and I want to point something out about the uniqueness of the situation that they're in, because it sounds nuts to have a group of people say, well, the government doesn't work. It makes them sound like seriously fringe people. But there's something that people listening to this need to understand about Nevada, because it is extremely unique in the United States. The federal government owns over 80% of land in that state. Mm-hmm. Now, the next closest is either Alaska or Utah, like 60%. I forget which. But think of a wasteland like Alaska, and the feds own even less of that state than Nevada. So there's been this multi-generational overlap of responsibilities with local units. Also about the state, there are really only a couple really big locuses of population with Las Vegas and Reno. And then we don't think much of rural Nevada, but it exists, and it's a totally different world than the Vegas Strip. It is such a weird thing. Like, if there was a state that could be an Okies weird story, it is that state.
Yeah. Well,
there's really nothing like it. Like, I'm from New York, and it's less than 1% here that the federal government owns. So it's literally like 90 times greater ownership in that state. So when you're looking at something as complex as farming on public lands, it's going to get messy and people are going to be unhappy.
Well, it's all land that's, during homesteading that no one wanted, right? And then you have like families like the Bundys and Mormons, especially in the West, who, escaped from New York because of persecution, and then went to Chicago, and then eventually went out west, and then found, land there that the government was basically giving away, and like to anybody who can lay claim to it and, make it economically viable. So
productive in some way.
And basically, like Mormons went west and they wanted to establish American Zion for themselves, right? So there's a real connection for the Bundys to this land. Like we went to this doesn't. I'm going to get back to what you were saying earlier, but this something that occurred to me is like we went to the Heritage Museum in that area, and there's like it's a very small little library with like 2 bookshelves, but there's like two whole rows of shelves that are just stuff about Bundy's like family, right? Their ancestors. There's streets there named after their relatives, right? And you go to the cemetery, and the most prominent ones are their ancestors. So they are connected, to the area. Of course, there's the argument to be made that, it actually belongs to the Paiute people, who've been there since, for tens of thousands of years, and I think that's legitimate as well. But what the Bundys feel is that, and I'm not sure. I don't actually totally agree with them with this, but what they would say to that is, well, the natives they didn't protect their land, and we're gonna fight to protect our land. And if we lose it, then we lose it. But we're going to continue to fight until that happens. So I don't personally totally agree with that, but that's their kind of view of it. But yeah.
That's another thing I think is extremely difficult for most people to understand, is having a connection to a place that matters to that degree.
Mm-hmm.
You've got to have a certain lifestyle, and usually many generations before that even begins to build within a family or a town. I think it's hard, number one, to explain, and number two, even when somebody explains it cleanly, it's hard for it to sink in because there's just no frame of reference. I mean, the closest thing I can think of is like the way you feel about family members. They're quite a bit more important than other humans. Everybody has the same human dignity, but there's something about your family members. Well, applying that to something like a spot of land, especially when it's if Nevada was a country, Donald Trump would have called it a shithole country, aside from Vegas. It is dry and rocky and it sucks.
Yeah.
And they're that attached to a place that is so difficult to exist in.
It doesn't make them that much money either. Like they're
right. Yeah.
Like maybe 20,000.
They're fighting to maintain a life that's not
$15,000.
Is that about it?
Like not much at all.
Okay.
They're they also grow melons as well. So they got that, and then all of them have different businesses. But yeah, they're not rich. They're not trying to protect wealth here. It's for them. And yeah, it did take a while for me to totally get it like you're describing. But yeah, going there and seeing it firsthand, it makes perfect sense to me now that, yeah, what's at stake for them is their identity and heritage. And then this is something I kept, I wrote down pretty early on to, like, when I was thinking about this, the kind of thematic idea at the center of this story is that everybody is trying to preserve something. So they're trying to preserve their identity. Environmentalists are trying to preserve, the environment, and then federal government, the rule of law. So it's just like all of these different elements trying to preserve something important to them.
Somebody's got to give.
Yeah.
I mean, with the nature of each of those parties' stances, they cannot all coexist. It's just not possible. So with all of that stuff happening, and in terms of news coverage, I don't know what it was like in Canada, if this was even, really on the radar. But after the Lavoy Finicum shooting happened, and there was, some investigation in that after the fact, and it kind of died out a bit, and that was kind of it. What happened? What happened with the Bundys after all of that blew over?
Oh, so they spent 2 years in detention without the ability to bail themselves out. And half of the time they were in detention, they were in solitary. So then after about, I think it was two years in prison, there was 2 trials, and the first trial was about the occupation. And the prosecutors basically tried to say that, the Bundys and their supporters were guilty of trying to impede federal government workers from doing their duty, which meant, like, the BLM people who worked at the wildlife refuge in Oregon, the one that they took over. And the jury pretty much decided that no, that's not. They don't think that's what happened, or they didn't think that the prosecution really. The prosecution didn't, what's the word I'm looking for? They didn't build the case well enough. They didn't,
they didn't meet the burden of proof.
Yeah. There you go. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And so that case was, the Bundys won that. And then the second one was about the roundup, and a federal judge found that the FBI was withholding information, and she dismissed the case with prejudice. So they can't be taken to court again or charged for what's called the standoff.
Double jeopardy type.
Yeah.
Not double jeopardy. That's when you're convicted, right?
Yeah, exactly. So it's not, it's not quite double jeopardy, but like they can't be taken to court for that standoff at the roundup ever again. because it was dismissed with prejudice.
Yeah, they get one shot at prosecuting that crime, and if it doesn't, if it's a miss on the prosecution side, you don't get like 3 or 4 attempts until you get it right.
Yeah.
you shoot your shot, and that's it.
Yeah. So that was that basically. And now, I mean, 2 of the Bundys that I've been talking to the most, Ryan and Ammon. They both ran for governor. I think Ryan got 1% of the vote, but then Ammon got 17%. And Ammon is kind of like,
that's significant.
Yeah, in Idaho, he got 17% of the vote when he ran for governor. And he's constantly getting into problems again. Like he's definitely become the de facto leader of the Bundy movement. And yeah, he's continued to get into problems. Mostly like, I think there was one thing with, it was COVID restrictions one, or it was like a hospital. He went into a hospital, and I forget all of the details, but basically there's like a court case going on right now about that, and he hasn't been participating in it at all, the civil trial. Like he's like, I don't want anything to do with it. He told me this via text message, which is going to be great to add into the video actually, where he's like, well, I'm not doing anything. I'm not going to that court. They're all corrupt, and he might actually go to prison soon. So that's going to be interesting. And Ryan and Cliven, when we were meeting them, where the ranch is in Nevada, I mean, they're still grazing cattle. And they still, like, Ryan's son was with Cliven the first day we met Ryan, and they were in the mountains and they were taking care of the livestock there, and so they're still doing their thing, and it just feels like
and not paying the federal government still.
No, they just do it now. Okay. Yeah, they just it really feels like that whole area is kind of owned by their family in a way. It's insane. I actually have footage of us. First of all, Ryan is he's a sovereign citizen, so he doesn't believe in licensing at all. So I have footage of us. He's driving us, and he's not driving with a license. And then we get to a gate that says, "No trespassing, property of the state." And then he tells his son, "Moroni, go out, open that gate." I'm like, "Are we allowed to do that?" He's like, "No, this is our land." And his son just opens this gate. It's great. So yeah, it almost feels kind of lawless in a lot of ways, and all the signs are shot up. But that's like just a thing in the West, especially in rural areas.
So the sign shooting thing, Kevin mentioned it a week or two ago when we were talking about who was coming on later on, and it was the day that you tweeted about the sign thing, and I said to Kevin, I'm like, half the signs around my house are full of bullet holes. Like, this isn't a Western.
Oh, it's not only a Western. It's
like,
just
how is this weird?
I think it's just a rural thing then, I guess.
It's rural America.
Yeah. It surprised me because like I
gotta shoot something.
At first I thought it was
makes a very satisfying ting.
Oh yeah.
Every time.
Oh no, at first I thought it was because of the animosity between the Bundys and the BLM. And then I noticed that we're in Oregon and we see the same thing. So I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah. No, this is just a thing. Yeah.
It's not a political statement so much as, here's something that's probably bright and yellow.
Yeah.
I wonder if I can hit it from 100 yards.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's what they're telling me too. They're like, oh, well, people like to do target practice, and like, the kids need to learn how to shoot somehow, basically.
Yes.
Yeah. So start with a stop sign. What's the worst that could happen? So, where do we leave this now? It sounds like this is just kind of like a boiling pot that continues to boil, and at some point, it's once again going to overflow and spill everywhere.
I think that the BLM is the Department of Interior really is embarrassed about this, and they don't want. They won't even talk about it publicly. I called them and they're like, it's against our policy. We don't talk about the Bundys, because it really was embarrassing for them. Not only did they mess up, but they messed up in a very public way and spectacularly. So I don't know if they're going to try it again. I think perhaps maybe after Cliven passes, perhaps if it continues, because I mean, Ryan's
sounds like it's going to continue.
Yeah, Ryan's young son was going and helping Clive, and it seems like it's still like a thing that they keep in the family, and that they're doing, and it's probably gonna, go to Ryan, and then go to his son, and then Ryan's son once he has a son or daughter or whatever. But yeah, I think it's just gonna continue, and I mean, at least what Ryan told me is if it happens again, they're gonna do whatever it takes. That's pretty much what they said is like, he gave me an analogy. He's like, well, if someone cuts in front of you in line, what are you going to do? Are you going to protect your rights, or are you going to, just let him take your rights from you? Because the whole way it works, and well, I'm not even quite sure if it works this way. This is something that I'm kind of confused about, and I have to talk to someone. But there's rights associated with usages of the land. So there's water rights. There's like land use rights. There's a whole bunch of different rights. And he's like, well, as long as we continue to use that and we put the land to beneficial use, and we, keep a list of our rights, and that we're continue to use them, then we can keep it. It's like you either use it or you lose it kind of philosophy thing.
Right.
So what was I saying? Yeah. So that's pretty much their thing. It's like, they're going to continue to use their rights, and yeah, until the federal government comes back and tries to stop them again. And yeah, that's. I think eventually it might happen, but we'll see.
It's in a way, it's a giant moral / political game of chicken, and that's really the problem. Is that the only way it stops is if somebody quits, and neither side has an incentive to give up. And it also, like, if the government just gives up, that sets a very bad precedent nationally, especially like the fact that this is a national body instead of a state one is tremendously important here, because the effects of it do spread potentially to situations across the United States, completely different ones.
Yeah.
So what they do in this goofy scenario with a family and some cattle pulling subsistence life out of sand and stone actually could set a precedent that matters somewhere in Rhode Island. I mean, it just makes it so messy, and I feel like the BLM is just kind of hoping that the Bundys give up, that it peters out over generations.
I think that's all they can do at this point. I mean, right now the Bundys really believe if this was taken to the Supreme Court, that the Supreme Court would rule in their favor and the law will actually change. They believe that what the federal government is doing is unconstitutional. And yeah, so they do believe that things could change. It's just right now it's kind of a waiting game. It's kind of a waiting game to see what happens.
I want to switch gears real quick, but first, before we switch gears, do you have a sense of how long? I mean, I can't even imagine how much footage you have, how much stuff you have to go through, the amount of research that you've already mentioned you're continuing need to continue to do before you even write a script. What is your thought process as far as when this project will see the light of day?
I'm guessing I think 2 to 3 months, something like that.
Okay. That's not so bad.
Yeah, I mean, I really like what I do, so I work all day basically most of the time. So I could get, right. I think I can, it's a matter of, so we have 11 hours of interview footage. So right now I'm just going through all of that and, making notes and organizing that so I know where everything is. And then I have a fair bit of research still left to do. Just like, I know the overall story pretty well. Like I'm talking about it now, I'm not really looking at notes or anything. I have a pretty good understanding of it, but the really deep stuff, there's this one dude that I've been talking to who knows like everything about this thing, and yeah, like it just shows me how much left there potentially is to do, because he knows this story in a way that you can only know it that well is if you've been like paying attention to it like for like 10 years or something, I think. Like, so I'm not going to get to that point, but at least I have that guy kind of helping me out now, which is nice. you know, and I also want to do more remote interviews. There's quite a few people that I need to talk to still. I need to talk to Eamon Bundy, who I was saying earlier is kind of like the leader of the movement now. So he didn't want to do something on camera, but he seems okay with a remote interview. So that's incoming. Yeah, there's quite a few more people that I want to talk to, just more reading to do. Otherwise, just lots of organizing and, fact checking and stuff, basically.
Yeah. Well, it's an absolutely fascinating story. I now have a deeper appreciation for why Yellowstone is so popular and like the most popular franchise in media in the last several years, which has spin-offs to other shows and goes into the deep lore. Like you mentioned, Matt, it's like, well, because it's real, because this is a real story and it is extremely fascinating and it is complex. And there are a lot of different characters and complex motivations for everybody and really no clear good guys and bad guys. I mean, it is the perfect like human story. Like
everybody is doing the right thing and everybody's doing the wrong thing.
Yeah.
It is just as messy as it gets.
God, I got to get into that
It's
show
perfect.
because I think I watched the first 2 episodes, but I don't know.
Well, the 1923 prequel.
I watched that.
Okay, yeah, because the plot of that is directly about
Homesteading.
the grazing rights. You know? Yeah.
Or wait, no, 19. Okay, so there's 18. I think I watched 1880 or something. That's another.
The one with Tim McGraw.
Yeah. So that's the homesteading.
That's the first one, right? The one with Harrison Ford, The Next Generation, is the one that's about grazing.
Very
rights.
Cool. I'm gonna watch that. Okay, for sure. I do like. Yeah, there's just. And it's funny, a lot of people don't know about this stuff, but it's been a big battle in the West for a very long time.
Yeah, but I think that the popularity of the Yellowstone series, franchise, I would say at this point, might lend itself to making your documentary that much more appealing to people to get the real story behind it. But this is where I'm going to switch gears. It's a hard switch.
Yeah.
So just be prepared.
Sure.
We're going to do this right now.
Is it hard like Linus's hard R?
Nothing's harder than that.
Wait, did he really?
Less hard.
Did he say that?
That's a 10. That's a 10.
Really
This is
surprising.
No, that's the joke. He didn't.
Oh,
that's the joke.
okay.
That's why you have to watch. That's why it's funny. That's why it's a skit out of The Office, only it happened in real life.
Oh,
That's why you
okay.
have to watch it.
Okay.
It's very comedic. The hard switch is about your weight loss.
Oh yeah. Okay,
we
I
had-
can talk about
yeah,
that.
yeah.
So we had Art, the gamer from Mars, on recently, who has had a very kind of public body transformation as a result of being like a meme and bullied and feeling bad about himself. Now he's like a ripped Adonis.
Yeah, no, he's a Chad. Actually,
total friggin' Chad now. But you have been on your own weight loss journey, so I just really would have been remiss not to ask you about what spurred that on. What have you been doing in order to keep the weight off or lose it to begin with? Just inspire anybody out there who's looking for the motivation to shed a few pounds.
Sure. Yeah, I was thin pretty much my whole life until COVID, and then it was like lockdowns and also what's it called, Uber Eats and DoorDash. So I just ordering food all the time and like bad food, and gained a lot of weight. And then people, started saying, "You look like Lori Lightfoot." So,
I remember when people were giving you a hard time on Twitter about that.
Yeah. I kind of find it funny too, because like I do kind of like making fun of myself. I've never really had like, but I wanted to look better and I wanted to be healthier. And I've been, what's it called? Like I said earlier, like I've been on camera more often now. I've been like going and meeting people, and I just wanted to look better for that too. And so my initially my idea was I was gonna make a weight loss video. I was gonna make I was very ambitious about it. I think I said I was gonna make the most amusing weight loss video of all time. So I had all these plans of going and meeting this guy on Twitter who lost a bunch of weight by like smoking cigarettes and staying away from seed oils and only eating like really weird food. I was gonna go meet that guy, but then it really kind of didn't work out. And then I got I started working on some other thing that's actually a Patreon only video about this dolphin director guy. It was a very strange thing. He was like holding animators in his house or something like that. It was very bizarre. But yeah, so I got consumed with that, and I was just losing weight, and I realized, well, this isn't very exciting. I don't know how I'm going to make a video about this because I'm just slowly losing weight because I'm, what I did is I just ate less and I exercised more pretty much. And I stopped drinking beer. So that helped, Yeah.
It's
Do
fun.
you find...
So, I was just going to say, it's funny when an answer is that simple.
It really is.
Yeah,
It's like,
Art said
I
the
did
same
all
thing.
this crazy stuff. I started going to saunas and,
No,
it's like, no, I just ate less.
That's what Art said. He's like, I watched what I ate and I moved around. And after a period of years, I, turned into an action figure.
yeah.
I mean,
It's,
did you find that you reclaimed time? Like, are you able to work optimally for more hours than you used to? Like, is there a physical change?
Much better, especially I got into the habit of drinking beer at night, and I didn't realize how much that was affecting me the next day, where I was working probably at 70% when I, because even like, I don't know, even 1 or 2, you're going to get kind of slightly hungover. And then, so I think cutting that out, especially because the calories are crazy with beer too. I don't know if I was like, it was just like a habit thing that I would do. So I stopped doing that, and I stopped ordering food all the time. Although during this trip, of course, I ate a lot of junk, but, I just started eating healthier, exercise 30 minutes a day. It started with just like walking, and now I can run for 30 minutes. And then over time, I lost the weight. It took a couple months, and I think it started in November. And I really started to notice a change in, like late January is when I really started to notice a change. And so I started at my heaviest, I was 220, and right now I'm 170, and I kind of plateaued sort of at 170. But
That's a lot of weight,
you
though.
Can't have, you can't have much more to go.
Yeah, I can lose about like 15, I think. 15 pounds more. I still got like a little tiny bit of what's it called, gut, and then, some weight here. It's you can kind of see it in my face sometimes. I don't know if it's totally visible with this lens or whatever, but sometimes it's especially from the side. So I think there's some people saw like some progress pictures I posted, and they're like, "Oh, did you just get a haircut or something? I don't see any difference." But it's
that's disappointing.
Like the Alex Jones ones.
Yeah. No, but
it's so funny.
It's definitely way more visible. Like I was at if you see me in person, like I was at when I was right before I landed in Vegas, and I think it was in Pearson Airport in Toronto. Anyway, one of the guys looked at my passport, and he's like, and then he gave me a double take, and then I'm like, yeah, I lost a lot of weight, and he's like, oh yeah, congratulations. But like if you did look at my like passport picture, which I think I took at my heaviest, like it is very, very noticeable. Like I look fairly different now than I did, especially in like 2021.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, it's awesome to see. It's really, I don't know. It's something that I think is inspiring when we see, kings online in their weight loss journeys, getting fit. I've been doing a little bit of my own. You might hear about in the future with a certain app that's sponsoring Vsauce too. Cool. And it's one of those things.
But it's legitimate. Yeah.
Well, yeah, it's one of those things where it's like, oh, I actually really needed this in my life. Like,
are you getting swole?
Super badly?
You're getting swole?
No. Dude, just being able to like walk up and down the stairs confidently is an improvement.
Bro, I
you
feel
know what
that.
I'm saying? Like it's an improvement. It's an improvement that I feel. It makes my life better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I do the math on this? Because I want to say why it's so important to us. Because if you can if you can get more out of your day and you can unlock an additional hour of living life, being productive, whatever, think about how that breaks down. Let's say some days you just don't have it, but almost all of them you do. That's like 300, 350 additional hours in a year. And if I said to you, like, hey, what's the easiest way for you to devote 8 to 10 full-time working weeks to your project? You'd be like, no, that's impossible. I cannot take 2.5 months off of my job. Well, like, no, you can't. But you can probably get a little bit more out of your day by feeling better and just being more productive. And then all of a sudden you have like 3 months a year to do whatever it is you want to do. I mean, it's such a no-brainer, accessible way to make everything better.
There was a while where I think I was like, man, I don't know why I can't work for more than 3 to 4 hours a day. And I started getting a bit healthier, and I could just do it all day now. So it's interesting, like, because at that time I thought that was just my own limitations. Like that was the limitations of that. Like I was limited by that because that was all I was capable of is that amount of time a day. But then obviously being healthy and having mental clarity helps tremendously.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Skipping the beer and the nachos and all of a sudden
the beer is like that,
crushing it.
That was the thing that especially I realized, because it's like, yes, especially during lockdowns, I just got into that habit of drinking, a few beers every night. And I thought it wasn't really that big a deal. But if you really think about it, it's like 800 calories a night. And then it's like...
it's like a pound a week.
Yeah. And then it's also, what's it called? You wake up, and even just with like a little bit of that, like you're going to be slightly hungover. You're going to be slightly miserable. And it's like...
little bit dull.
It's like, okay, well, I could have like something that kind of relaxes me for like 15 minutes and then kind of simmers down, or I can have a really good day the next day. So I just kind of chose, instead of having fun at night, it chose, to live for the next day kind of thing, which makes you sound like an addict, which I wasn't really. It was just like habitual,
That's how it breaks down, though. Like you said, with your daily habits and life, like that's the impact of that specific choice, and that's the impact, and that's the payoff. And you chose the payoff that made more sense for you, and that was more important to you.
Yeah. And by the way, art was actually pretty inspiring for me too, because I remember I saw him at VidCon in 2021, and that's when I was at my heaviest. Like that's when I was 220 pounds, and like. Everything about him like was just really kind of inspiring, and like, not only Chad, but then he was just a remarkable guy, really nice, really just professional, just cool, someone you kind of look up to. And then I remember afterwards, because I'm never going to forget this. Afterwards, I think he was the only person like a week later who sent me a message saying, "It was good to meet you. I look forward to it again soon." And I'm like, damn, that's a good guy. That's a really good guy.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And that
it's
try
amazing
and do that.
How a little message like that can have such an impact, but it's true.
Yeah. I think everybody wants to kind of feel accepted, and like those kind of little things, like they really do help people feel, better about like how you feel about them or whatever. So like kind of reminder, being like, yeah, we're friends. I like you. You're cool, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's nice to get compliments every now and then.
Yeah.
You take them when you can. All right, man. We are really looking forward to this Bundy documentary. We know you have plenty of work ahead of you, but it sounds like you're excited, motivated, and you're just going to crush it. So we'll definitely, everybody keep an eye on the Create Unknown. We'll definitely be promoting it once it comes out. But even better than that, what you should do is just follow Oki. Just follow him on Twitter. Go to Oki's Weird Stories. It's OKI. And before we finish, I have to ask you one last question, which is one that we like to ask all of our guests. And that is, what makes an interesting person?
Oh, what makes an interesting person? That's good.
You talk to a lot of them.
That's good. God, it's something that I started to realize more recently, especially. Shout out to Tate Hoffer, who's listening in right now. He's in the call. He's the cameraman who came with me throughout the whole thing. And he's someone who he was kept pushing this idea like to me, where it's like people who are sincere with their beliefs and like consistent. And I found like that was something that was really compelling when we were listening to the Bundys talk, is that, yeah, that sincerity, that level of commitment to their values, that airtight logic, there's something really compelling about that. Definitely. Because I mean, it's one thing if someone's doing like incredible things like Elon Musk, but then they're just like kind of all over the place, and you just kind of look at them, you're like, wow, that you're kind of a douche. But if it's if it's someone who's like, I mean, this guy's doing like amazing stuff, but you know, he just doesn't seem, I don't know, emotionally mature or something. I don't know what it is, that there's some disconnect there that makes you kind of feel sorry for a billionaire, which is weird. But yeah, anyway, shout out to Tate Hauver, who's in the call, cameraman extraordinaire.
Yeah, it is an amazing thing when you find someone who knows where they are, if that makes sense. They know what story they're living within. And I think that this is a whole other podcast, definitely, but I think we're increasingly in an era in which people do not know what story they're in. Yeah. And that is a cause of a lot of distress. We'll just put it that way.
That is the enemy creeping in. That's a solo episode that we should do at some point. Yeah, we can hit that one hard.
Maybe we'll do that next week. Look, man, thank you so much again for coming back on the show. It was absolutely a pleasure, and I just want to reiterate that really looking forward to your next documentary. Your work is awesome, and just as art inspired you, I think a lot of people are inspired by you. So keep it up. Keep up the great work, man.
Thank you so much for having me. I love doing this podcast. And whenever you want, just hit me up, and I'll be very glad to come back and talk and hang out.
All right. We're gonna hold you to that. Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks to all of our patrons for hanging out with us on this recording. And this is a Patreon supported podcast through and through. So if you want to become one, just go to patreon.com/thecreateunknown and help keep this podcast going. Matt and I will be back next week by ourselves. We'll be guestless. It's kind of a hard word to say. Right. Guestless. Maybe we'll talk about what stories we're living in. I don't know. We'll see. But we'll be back then. We'll see you then. Until then, see you, Space Cowboys.
Thanks for listening to The Create Unknown. We make this show with the support of our patrons. 100% of that goes directly to keeping episodes going every week, and the recent support has been amazing. Sid Polk, NRM, Venture Addicts, Weezer Good, you all really do make this show happen. Thank you to the Tots and Dumpster crew, old and new, who save tiny little lives every month. Thank you to our grizzled, battle-hardened child infantry. Clemente de los Santos, Dan the Latch, Demetrius Andrews, Erica, Farrakhan, Jen Mefasanti, Kevin Menard, Mikhail Steinke, Monahim, Natsu, Penny Peddler, Risebread, Ryan Kinder, Samuel Manser, Sean S., Sean Malone, and Tom Vidioger. And a tremendous shout out to our elite baby gang commanders: Atrocious Guff, Kat, Dojangles, Graham Robertson, James Gallagher, Jeff Davis, Orange Vanilla Coke, Patrick Pister, TCU's personal pilot, Andy, Ryan Carroll, Baseweight, Vinthos, Yeetus Deletus, Jonas Walter, Nathan Robinson, Jelksies, and of course, Trevstead. You are the elite. Thank you as well to our indentured servants, producer-editor Ben Webster, Minecraft mogul Laterman, Discord kitten wrangler Conrad, and producer emeritus Dan Yoshua. Thanks to Baseweight for use of Created in the Unknown for the opening theme. Thanks to Electro Voice for giving us mics to sound good on top of it. And a special thanks to Main Gear for powering all of our PC endeavors. The Create Unknown is an Unknown Media production in partnership with Studio 71.